My hometown, a suburb of Detroit, is routinely ranked as one of the safest cities in America. It has been all my life. So the quintuple murder that happened here when I was in middle school stuck out. We had a jewelry store named Italia Jewelry, and the owner did his own commercials, so Marco Pesci was a well-known member of the community. He was probably prominent in other ways, but I remember seeing the commercials as a kid. On December 21st, 2002, a pair of dirtbags broke into his house. His mother, who was visiting from Italy for the holidays, was the only one home at the time and was taken hostage. Marco returned and dropped his three kids, ages 6, 9, and 12 off, without going inside. Grandma's there to watch them, and he's heading to work. The kids, of course, walked in to find two gun-wielding men with designs on their dad's safe. The combination to which only Marco had. So, his oldest, it is suspected, is forced at gunpoint to call Italia Jewelry and ask his dad to come back. Marco comes home to the hostage situation and, as far as we know, immediately complies with the men's demands. The safe and the rest of the house are ransacked of anything valuable. The two men murder the entire family. The family's absence is quickly noticed, and the horror show at the home is quickly discovered. When the news broke, the uncle of one of the killers goes immediately to the cops. The dude had bragged that he'd just done something that would be on CNN. It turned out the uncle didn't find the murder of children anything worth bragging about. The killers were very quickly caught and sentenced in under 6 months. Quite probably the single worst crime in the history of Livonia, Michigan. When I was 7, my mom, older sister 10, and I were walking down an unlit path late at night. This was when I used to live in Russia, and we were coming back from her friend's house. I turned around and saw a man walking about 50 feet behind us and warned my mom that I was scared. She said it's just someone walking home too, and you calm down, but to quit looking behind me. I looked behind me again, and he was suddenly a lot closer. I started pleading with her that he was coming after us. We all started speed walking, but he quickly caught up to us and put a knife to my mom's throat. My mom yelled, "Girls, run!" and we took off. During this time, my mom was applying for a visa and had many important documents in her purse, and she yelled, "Sister, catch my purse," to which he said if she threw her purse, he would kill her. My sister and I ran nonstop about a mile home and told my mom's loser live-in boyfriend that someone attacked and took our mom. I don't know why calling the police didn't occur to any of us. Probably because the police didn't give a crap in that region of Russia. The boyfriend actually asked us what we wanted him to do, to which I yelled at him to go find her and gave him a steak knife. 7-year-old me sat by the front door with a butter knife for hours waiting for the boyfriend to return with my mom. He returned a few hours later without her, saying he couldn't find her. I was livid and told him to keep looking and not to come back without her. She returned mid-morning, beaten to a pulp, beyond recognition. Her clothes were torn, and she had no pants or underwear. The guy took her behind some sheds and awed and beat her. After he left, she walked a mile or so home in broad morning light, half nude and covered in blood, and nobody even stopped to help her. How drugs are pushed on the public for profit, with only 1-month-long trial periods or none at all if the drug is a modified analog of another current drug. How doctors push a new drug on patients, saying it is safe or non-addictive, only to have those patients die from the drug or spiral down a lifelong path of addiction, ruining families and lives. Families are being buried and ruined by debt for life-saving treatments. People accepting death so that they don't burden their loved ones with their financial disaster. The scariest story I've ever heard of is the U.S. medical system, specifically the drug approval and advertising system and the 510K biomedical product approval system. Got attacked by a ghost, I think. One night I'm in my bed with my boyfriend. We newly lived in a 200-year-old building, a former fisherman's mission right on the harbor. During the night, I have an event that could normally be explained away by sleep paralysis, if not for a few peculiarities. From my perspective, asleep or otherwise, I suddenly have a force pinning me down and grabbing at my throat. As I see it, whether I am asleep or awake, I suddenly feel a force pinning me down and grasping at my throat. In my opinion, I'm fully awake and I struggle with all my might against this overwhelming sense of dread and anger that is pressing down on me. I'm prepared to confront any challenge that arises. I'm game for a scrap. When the need presents itself, this goes on for a while and boom, I get a flash of a face right in my own, a middle-aged guy with a beard, and I'm released. From his perspective, he wakes up to me wide-eyed and thrashing. Apparently my veins in my throat were huge, and I'm gurgling and trying to shout. I'm red and pretty cooked up and very pissed off. He thinks probably sleep paralysis and is scared to wake me. So we meet again after the flash of the bearded guy. Now I'm sweating and up, remembering everything exactly as it happened, and he's super uneasy as well. Now this dude doesn't have an imagination, which helps me rationalize what happens next. We both are now sitting up in bed, and we realize the room is freezing and just feels really f***ing off. We look to the wall in front of us at the end of the bed, and there are black lines being drawn in no pattern or order right across the white painted wall. I get out of bed, look at this. We're hallucinating, right? Bang! Off the wall to the side, and our full laundry basket tips over violently, and I bravely Superman back onto the bed. Temperature goes back to normal. We don't sleep the rest of the night. Whatever happened, it wasn't sleep paralysis, and something really didn't like me. Nothing else ever happened again in that place. Since then, I've encountered several supernatural experiences, both awake and asleep, and I remain receptive to all of them. I'm an engineer, and logic is king to me. Some shit we can't explain. In 2020, 3 weeks before my birthday and 2 days before his, my partner tried to kill me, his cat, and then hung himself. His parents never invited him to his funeral and never sent me his ashes, but a friend got some and sent them to me. This is the background. 2021, I was starting to put it behind me. Went to karaoke with my current partner and former best friend, had some drinks, and I had a blast. I remembered on the way home that I'd been given something by my Greek family that felt right to deliver to my dead partner. During COVID, we would wake up early and walk to a park where I would swing. After he died, it became where I went to talk to him. Friend and partner were on board with a late-night delivery, so we stopped at the park. The only cars belonged to the neighboring houses. There was no noise outside. It's a short walk in pitch-black darkness until you get to the swings. As we approach the swings, we see a small red glowing light. I loudly and drunkenly ask what it is and stumble toward the swings. My current partner was the DD, so he was sober. He hushed me, grabbed both of our arms, and quickly told us to leave under his breath. The small red light was a man standing alone next to the swing smoking a cigarette. He was completely silent and barely moved other than to take another drag. He was watching us with the most intense look of hatred in his eyes. It still chills me to the core what might have happened if my partner hadn't gotten us out of there. I was so close that I was the only one who could see that look in his eyes until my partner grabbed my arm. I still wake up terrified from nightmares about his eyes. Had a friend whose grandmother was a victim of the pillowcase artist. I remembered hearing a few details of the story, but not a lot, as she was obviously very private about it. It always made me sad when I thought about it. She seemed to be more ashamed than anything. I suppose that's generational. It was really shocking for me listening to a true crime podcast and hearing about the guy that got convicted and having the realization dawn on me slowly. Got in touch with that friend and asked if she'd heard and if it was the guy. There's no confirmation really, but what are the odds she was assaulted by a different stranger with the same exact MO at a time when he was active in the area she lived in? When I was in high school, the same friend's older cousin and I worked at the same McDonald's. We weren't like best friends or anything, but work friends. Cutting up on the clock and getting on everyone else's nerves. Her boyfriend murdered her. Odie tried to make it look like a suicide. They found evidence of him planning and premeditating and that he'd administered the fatal dose. That family couldn't catch a break, I guess. On November 15, 1966, two young couples were joyriding around in a black 1957 Chevy to a remote hangout spot north of Point Pleasant, known as the TNT area. One of the couples was Linda Scarberry and Roger Scarberry. The other was Steve Mallett and Mary Mallett. When they got there, next to the abandoned North Power Plant, they suddenly saw two large red eyes that reflected the light from the car's headlights. Steve noticed it first and pointed it out to the group. This is when they are said to have noticed that the glowing red eyes belonged to a strange creature. They claim to have seen a gray, man-like figure with wings go around the corner at the old power plant. They said that the creature didn't run, but wobbled like it couldn't keep its balance. Linda described the creature as having circular, fiery red eyes and a body like a man, but with wings. They said the creature was about 6 or 7 feet tall, with wings folded against its back, half man, half monster. She said you could see the muscles in its legs. The couples couldn't believe what they had seen. They quickly drove onto Route 62. Linda yelled for Roger to hurry. The couple then saw the creature on a hill by a large billboard as they went around a curve. It spread its wings and went straight up into the air. They were all terrified and kept yelling for the driver to go faster. The Mothman began gliding back and forth over the back of their car. We didn't know what it was. I don't think we've ever been so scared, said Linda. As they went along a straight stretch of road, they were doing over 100 miles per hour, but the creature was still able to follow them. They saw it in the back window and saw the shadow go across the car as it flew. They couldn't get away from it. They could also hear the wings hitting the tops of the cars they drove. Roger's 57 Chevy reportedly bears scratch marks from the impact. Squeaked like a big mouse, said Mary Mallett. They were only able to get away from the Mothman when they reached the edge of Point Pleasant. The creature disappeared, veering off into a field as they went into town. The couples continued going into town. They stopped at the local Dairyland as they tried to figure out what to do next. Linda suggested they go to the police, but Steve and Roger thought they'd just laugh at them and wanted to go back to make sure the thing was still there first. The group ended up being too afraid to do that, so they turned around. As they were turning around, they saw a large dead dog lying along the road, which was gone when they went back again later. The couple said the winged creature jumped out as if they passed the dead dog, flew over the car, and went through the field. They drove back into town and parked at Tiny's Diner and decided to contact the police. The teens told their story to Deputy Millard Halstrad. They told police that they saw a large winged creature whose eyes glowed red when the car headlights picked it up. They described it as a flying man with 10-foot wings following their car. Halstead didn't believe them at first, but he knew they weren't troublemakers and saw that they were genuinely terrified, so he actually went out to investigate their story. The couples drove back out to the TNT area with the deputy. Millard shined a spotlight around the area, including the tree lines. Deputy Halstead is said to have heard strange static disturbances coming from his radio that he couldn't explain, but he found no clear sign of the creature itself. The witnesses were sitting in their car and said that they saw shadows circling nearby and a cloud of dust kick up from the adjacent coal yard. The Malletts were too scared to go back to their home. They stayed at the Scarberry's trailer, turned all the lights on, and stayed awake all night from fear. The following day, Sheriff George Johnson held a press conference to discuss the sightings. The local press began printing the story, naming the creature Mothman, based on the comic book character Batman, who had just gotten a television series at the time. Steve Mallett told the local newspaper, "We understand people are laughing at us. However, we wouldn't fabricate any of this to justify our actions." That same day, The couples went back to the TNT area during daylight and found odd-looking tracks resembling two horseshoes put together, but smooth. Steve saw something fly up inside a boiler when a door was kicked open. No one stayed around long enough to see what it was. After the original sighting, more and more people began reporting seeing similar things, such as Marcella Bennett's sightings, which happened a day later. Hundreds of cars full of eager people swarmed out to the TNT area at night in hopes of seeing the Mothman. A shadow was cast over the valley of Point Pleasant, and thus began the legacy of West Virginia's Mothman. This incident happened in either 90 or 91 when I was in grade school in a small town. I was in either second or third grade and woke up sick on a Wednesday morning, but I went to school anyway because if I did well on my spelling test, I would get a homework pass, which I collected but never used. Halfway through the day in gym class, my fever spikes and I get sent home. I'm passed out on the couch, sick for the rest of the week, only waking up to go to the bathroom with extreme nausea anytime I sat or stood up. My younger brother was 2 grades below me at the same school and came home one of those days talking about how a killer clown came to the school that day. Of course, I didn't believe him. My baby bro loved making things up to scare me. Besides, maybe I was imagining he told the story. I was sick after all. Monday rolls around, and I'm much better and go back to school. On the bus ride to school, the killer clown was all anyone was talking about. Okay, this is a really elaborate prank for a 6-year-old to pull, but still possible, right? We get to school. I go to my classroom, and again, all my classmates will talk about is the killer clown. They were saying that he ran down the hall outside our classroom, chasing some kid while holding a knife. There's no way my brother even knew my classmates, but still to be certain, I went to ask my teacher if what everyone was saying was true. She didn't want to talk about it. I'd never been so glad to have been out sick in my life. When I was about 16, I was getting off the bus near my house. I often bussed late and honestly didn't have much self-preservation. I'm lucky that this was the only time this happened to me. The street my house was on a side street near the bus stop, past a corner store. It was around midnight, and my street didn't have many streetlights because of its secluded location. To get to the house quickly, I crossed the road, walk past the corner store, and go down the side entrance to my street. The longer route involves walking up to traffic lights on the main road and along the well-lit main road until the turnoff to my house. This way is slightly longer, but in hindsight much safer, as it's better lit and more cars drive along there. Anyway, I get off the bus and have my music on my headphones. I cross the road and head past the shops. Standing outside them is a tall, bald man who looks pretty young. He gives me a smile and says something that I assume is hello, but I can't hear him because of my music. I smile briefly back and incline my head to him. In my mind at this stage, I thought it was weird that he was standing there when no shops were open and he couldn't have been waiting for a bus at 2, that he smiled at me and said anything at all. I turned down my street, and as I was walking, I started to feel uncomfortable, and I'm unsure why. You know that uneasy feeling you get sometimes? I chance a look out the corner of my right eye, and in the shadow cast from the light behind me, I can see his shadow not far behind mine. I'm still listening to the music, so I obviously can't hear him walking after me. I start to panic because I am in a perfect location right now for him to grab me, hurt me, or SA me, or all of the above. In a moment of quick thinking, I pull a headphone out and pretend to answer my phone. I pretend it's my dad and say things like, "Hey Dad, yep, I'm almost home. I can see your car outside." And, "Oh, is that Uncle James' red car there I can see too?" Our neighbors in the section of the flats had a red car that's parked outside. So I'm really just pointing out things so he can see I live very close by. I then say, "If you come outside, you'll be able to see me." I don't bother looking behind me. As soon as I hit my property, I race round the back door, run inside, and slam it shut, locking it. I never saw that man again, and I have no idea when he stopped following me, but I do know that the fake phone call probably saved my life. I remember spending a night in the fall with my friends when I was younger. We lived on a side of a mountain and we'd all walk the road at night because why not, right? It was about a mile from end to end and it was pretty quiet at night. There were 7 of us that were freshmen and the 5 or 6 siblings that tagged along. They were all a year or two younger. It was a normal night. 3 of us would start at one end and collect everyone along the way. Then we'd walk back to the halfway point where our friend had a trail that led up to the mountain. We usually just walked in a mob in the middle of the road because it was our road, really straight and again, really quiet. Her property's layout featured a gravel driveway that made 3 turns through light woods. It was the side of a mountain, so there wasn't any lighting except what came from the house or the moon. The first turn had a clearing where a past owner had a small paddock, but there was now a good-sized grass clearing with a small path to the neighbors cut through the tree line. 3 of the kids in the group lived next door. The second turn had a chicken coop and tool shed, and the last turn passed their garage and led to their house. Then, beyond the garage, there was a footpath that led up to the mountain, and at the top, we would have bonfires. Once we get to their property, we began to walk up her driveway. 2 of the boys wanted to go next door via the path so they could grab hoodies before we climbed the mountain. As our group approached the clearing, clattering away, we all collectively came to a complete halt and silence at once. An eerie silence. In the clearing where the paddock once existed stood 2 translucent white horses. One paid us no mind, the other slowly raised its head and looked our way. The ladies in the group all began screaming and running up the driveway, with the rest of us not too far behind. I unfortunately didn't want to be left with whatever they were and followed my friends. But once we all get up to the house and everyone collectively freaked out about what we'd seen, I convinced 2 of the guys to come with me to see if they were still there. They were not, and they were never seen by any of us again. To this day, I really regret not examining them closer. It was also one of the wildest things I'd experienced in my life at that point, so I'm sure I was rightfully scared to some degree. In any case, it appears that some horses have been consuming grass for eternity, FYI. I live in a town that I guess would be considered rural. We have a lot of wildlife, think bears, lynx, deer, wolves, the usual suspects, and have a healthy respect for said wildlife. There was a summer when I was about 9 when the bears were just everywhere, and if it hadn't been scary, it would have been kinda cartoonish. I guess at the time it was cartoonish because reflecting back, I remember being amazed by all the bear sightings. My best guess is that the food source that summer were just not good, so the bears sought out the next natural choice: garbage, grease traps, and ornamental apple trees in the town limits. My parents had sold their house at the start of the summer and didn't take possession of the new house until about a week before the school year started. We were living at my aunt and uncle's house because they spent their summer living on an island. I know how it sounds, but we live in a big-ass lake, so it's more commonplace than it sounds. My aunt and cousin were in town and at the house for a few nights because my uncle was out of town, and like I said, bears. So, we're all hanging out watching TV together, and we hear a noise. My dad goes out onto the deck to see if there's a bear in the garbage, and there was. The bear decides at this point the deck looks like a great place to check out. My dad did all the usual things, loud noises, lights, but the bear was not going to be deterred. My aunt, mom, and I were watching this whole thing unfold, and my aunt produces a freaking rock from inside the house. My dad dropped it on the bear from a relatively low height, which startled it. The bear bolted through the hedges, and we never found the rock. There were also 2 separate instances of my best friend opening their front door to a bear just casually eating their garbage or checking out their deck. The last piece of this story involves my best friend, his siblings, me, and our moms walking or biking to our local ice cream store. He rode up a small hill and around the corner and then promptly came right back down full speed with a baby bear not far behind him. Things I want to stress. Bears generally want to sweet all to do with people. They'll avoid making eye contact while actively eating your garbage. They're pretty conflict avoidant if they don't feel threatened. So the bear advancing on people was up, but that whole summer was pure nightmare fuel. They were wandering around town during the day, and they were determined. There hasn't been a summer like that since, but it was wild. It all happened in 1995 in Lithuania. 18-year-old man, Mindgaus, unalived his whole family, stepfather, his own mother, and 10-year-old sister. He disposed of the bodies in a sewage well in the garden and cemented it to the top. There's something sinister about this story. It gives me chills to this day. Mindgaus told the teachers and surrounding people that his family went to Latvia to sell some stuff, and they never came back. Villagers told him to go to the police. That person was viewed as a hero for still going on, studying, taking care of the farm, and keeping the house pristinely clean. In this case, he hid the signs of horrific crime. After investigations, it was clear that the stepfather and mother were beaten with a crowbar and stabbed to death. Stepfather has still fought back with his bowels ripped open. Next, they strangled the 10-year-old sister and hung her on a rope in the bathroom. Investigators found that the girl was alive when thrown into the well. She just choked on dirt and blood of her own dead parents. Moreover, Mindgaus and Blood, his older sister Inga, were rumored to be in an incestuous relationship with each other. The sister, Inga, showed no remorse after seeing the bodies of her parents. They wanted to sell all their parents' head and move to the USA to treat her cancer. She was ill. Everyone in this story passed in a few years' time. Inga passed from the cancer. Mindgaus was given a death sentence, but it was changed to life behind bars. In his cell, he unalived himself a year after his sister passed. When I was in high school, probably around 1990, I took a black and white photography class. We developed film and photos in the darkroom, and I was really into it. I was also a skater then, so I spent most days after school skateboarding or taking pictures and stuff. I must have been around 16 and had just become a Christian. Prior to that, I was into New Age stuff, and my friends and I would try and meet with astral projecting in our sleep. We would write the letter C on our hands to remind ourselves all day to stay conscious when we slept. So needless to say, I had very lucid dreams and kept a dream journal. One night I dreamt I was in a dark room and discovered someone's negatives. Among them were a few pictures of someone skating a halfpipe. The next day, I went to photography class, and while in the dark room, I found some negatives someone had left behind at one of the light machines. I was freaked out when I realized I had dreamt of these very same negatives. I treasured them as evidence, and I still possess them today. And at that time, I remember thinking as I held them in my hand that I had truly never seen them before I dreamed about them. It was such an unbelievable experience that I don't mention it much, but I know what I remember and have no way of explaining it or proving it. It was the first and last time I've had a dream like that.